world population. It's almost a banality. Everyone knows about it. How 2 million years ago there were perhaps 10 million of us. That population remained pretty constant for 1,900,000 years. And then at the coming of the New Stone Age, with the development of agriculture and settled habitats, residents, man ceased to be a hunter and food gatherer out there and became this agricultural. In short, we had civilization, because this is the beginning of civilizations. Okay, by 1650 there were 500 million people in the world, but it wasn't until the 20th century, with the development of technology, especially medical technology, medicine's ability to prolong our lives, that population exploded. We all know this. The population grows at a rate of 3.5% a year, so that every 20 years the population doubles. Now, the point of this article, in the so-called civilized, industrialized countries, zero population growth or even decrease of population is taking place. This has been going on for 20 or 30 years, in European countries especially. The population of Japan is expected to decrease from 126 million to 112 million by 2050. Germany's to decrease by 20 million. The large population growths take place in the countries that are too poor to support this growth. These countries cannot feed themselves, though the world can feed itself because of the developments of biogenetics and food engineering. But the poor countries cannot feed themselves, and the most startling development is water shortage. Especially in these very poor countries, African especially, there will be dramatic water shortages, so that we can expect two things out of all of this. Demographic shifts of large numbers of people from the so-called poor countries to the wealthy countries, let's say, the industrialized countries. These shifts mean that the large numbers of these poor people will come to be the laborers and perform the menial tasks in these countries. Now, this has been going on for 40 years in European countries especially. And in the US, the same thing happens. What this means is a shift of the makeup, the racial makeup of a population, a demographic shift. This is most dramatic in the US with the Hispanic population. And everyone knows that the Hispanic population will be the most numerous segment of the population in the US by 2020, I think. Anyway, such things are expected to happen in Japan and Korea, but I don't believe they will happen. I don't see Korea welcoming large numbers of Africans, let's say, or foreigners, and a racial mix taking place. Korea will remain mostly homogeneous, and I think Japan will too. There will not be great shifts in Japan. Some shifts, significant shifts, have taken place in France, especially, in Germany, in Italy not much, France and Germany, so that the welcoming of large number of Islamic, North African especially in France, Turks in France and Germany, the influx of large numbers of these people has made large differences, significant demographic differences, has changed the thinking, the temperament of these people. France has changed a lot in the 40 years that I've known France, and I would attribute it mostly to the influx of the North African population. And this has done maybe more good than harm. It's done a lot of good anyway, some harm, true. Okay, then demographic shifts, and the second development that I mentioned water wars. But this assumes the ability of the poor to make wars on the rich. And I don't quite see how that can happen. How do the poor arm themselves to attack the wealthy, those who have sophisticated armies? Which poor? Is Sudan going to attack the USA? Or anybody? No, I don't understand how they can say that. Unless we mean war in a much more subtle form, for example, terrorism. And in a sense, that's what terrorism is. If we assume that terrorism has almost nothing to do with Islam, for example, and basically I assume that, it has almost nothing to do with religion and religious values. It has a lot to do with culture, cultural pride, and economics. That's what terrorist wars, I assume, are. Has nothing to do with Islam, I would suggest. Islam doesn't teach killing people. Islam is a religion of peace, and so this is a cliche too. But just to comment on this, no, there will not be water wars unless we want to call them terrorist wars. And that, in a way, is what is happening.
World population. 1. At what point in the world history did human population begin to grow? 2. When did the population of the world reach 500 million? 3. What caused the population to boom in the 20th century? 4. In what countries is population decreasing? 5. Where are populations increasing? 6. Why is the rest of the world able to feed itself? 7. What is a recent development, especially in very poor countries? 8. What is to be expected by water shortages? 9. What changes have occurred in the racial makeup of the U.S.? 10. What is expected to happen to U.S. racial makeup? 11. Where have significant shifts taken place? 12. How have the people in those areas changed? 13. What do water wars connotate? 14. What are terrorist wars usually about? 15. Do you think Korea will experience a large racial influx? Why or why not? If so, what race?